can I just say one thing firstly? I love the name Eat Sleep Boxing Repeat.
Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. It's me, Niall. Delighted as always to be joined by Danny, and we're here discussing the future of a phenom, the monster Naoya Inoue, one of the best fighters in the world. Arguably, you might have him as your pound for pound number one. We're here to discuss whether people think that anybody can dethrone the monster and beat Inoue. Of course, he has a big fight coming up in September against MJ Akhmadaliev. A lot of people think it's his biggest test to date in his career. And then, yeah, who knows? It might be a move north to featherweight in the future. Likely will be. But yeah, who knows what the future is for this Japanese monster. And yeah, Danny, it's good to have you on as always. Always fun to discuss anyway. You know, not only a phenomenal talent, one of the most exciting fighters in the world, and yeah, it'll be good to get your opinion here because there is a lot of fascinating matchups for him. So it'll be interesting to see who we think kind of could have the best chance of dethroning him. But yeah, let's start with Akhmadaliev. You know, it's happening in September now in Tokyo, I believe. As I said at the start of the video, a lot of people think this is the biggest test so far, and probably justified in saying that. What's your thoughts on this fight and kind of what chance are you giving Akhmadaliev in September?
Really looking forward to the fight. Medalev's been one of the top guys in the division for a while now. I think it'll make for an entertaining fight. Medalev, incredibly athletic, defensively a bit lax at times, and ultimately I think that will cost him against the Inoue. Don't think the one punch knockout artist either at Medalev, which I think 99% of the time you're gonna need to be against the Inoue, or certainly close to it. Um, it's a weird one with Akhmadaliev. You know, the Tapales fight, losing that took a bit of luster off him. I watched his comeback fight, must have been a couple of months ago now, and he did look really flat, although is he boxing within himself, you know, trying to avoid injuries or cuts, knowing that the fight's in the pipeline, maybe you can allow him that. As I say, I think he'll give Inoue looks and questions he's not maybe answered before because of, you know, he's a relatively unique fighter stylistically, but ultimately I fancy Inoue to come out on top.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with what you said there. I think it's a good point that you make, and there is fighters that we'll discuss further in the video that have this power, but I do think you need to be a big puncher to have any chance of putting a dent in anyway. You know, you need to knock him back on his heels. You know, we've seen it with the likes of Lewis Neary, you know, did put him down. But and even that wasn't enough, you know. He picked himself up and went again. And Nonito Donaire had power that kind of knocked him back in his tracks in their first fight. But yeah, the greatness of the man just shone through there. Yeah, Akhmadaliev, I do think he's a very good fighter. I think it is justified to say that he probably is the biggest test so far of Inoue's career, although you might say Stephen Fulton was maybe a bigger test in terms of his slickness, you know, the back foot boxing. But yeah, Akhmed Aliev will cause some problems early, I think, but it'd be a huge shock, wouldn't it? It really would. I think it's only a matter of time before anyway, you know, downloads the data, as we say, and, you know, breaks him down and probably gets him out of there, if we're being honest. I'll go for an anyway stoppage there, but yeah, it'd be interesting early on, and as you say, we'll find out with Zach Medallia been kind of fighting within himself recently, but yeah, definitely justified. Deserves to be getting a shot, or let's see, can he live up to that kind of that hype that he's been getting, especially by Eddie Hearn. You know, Eddie Hearn's had a lot to say about how this fight's going to play out, but yeah, it's going to be interesting. Yeah, moving on. We both think that anyway, I'll get past Ahmed Aliev, and then after that, there is so many fascinating options. You know, one of them would be kind of moving up, but there's another fighter that I think, I'm gonna say it now, I do think he has the best chance of beating him, and I will stick my neck out and say he would beat anyway. The bantamweight king, JUNTO Nakatani. You know, let's talk about that. That'll be the biggest fight in Japanese boxing history by far. It looks like it very likely could happen at 122. What's your thoughts on that? Junto Nakatani against Naoya anyway.
Yeah, if I had to pick one fight to happen in boxing and to do that, I think that would be it. Forget AJ Fury, forget Tank Sakura. I think this is a fight of two pound for pound talents in their prime. I think all Japanese, both incredibly entertaining fighters. And I agree with you. I think of everyone we're probably going to discuss in this video, I think Nakatani has got the best chance of beating Inoue. And like yourself, if you're asking me now, I think he would. I think against Luis Neri, against Cardenas, Inoue showed that when he does come into attack, the right hand can come down and he can be invulnerable to a counter left off a southpaw. And I don't think there's anyone worse to be in the ring with, certainly in and around that weight, that level in your game than Junto Nakatani. I think pound for pound, he's got the best left hand in boxing, the best backhand left hand in boxing, I should say. Gets better every time I watch. Dominated. Rikishi was it? Or Inshida, sorry, Inshida from start to finish. Turned his eye a size and a shape I've never seen before. Yeah, I think the word is that Nakatani is maybe going to have a run out at 1-2-2 first. That would potentially be against Cardenas, which would be a great measuring stick for him. We saw Cardenas giving plenty to think about, and I think stylistically, I think Nakatani could get it done against Inoue. I really do.
Yeah, totally agree. We're both massively high on Junto Nakatani, and rightly so. Phenomenal fighter. Tall, rangy, southpaw, beautiful boxer, fast hands, and yeah, bone crunching power. Huge puncher, and they are attributes that could really cause anyway a lot of problems. And I do agree. I do think that he would be susceptible anyway to the threat of Junto Nakatani. And yeah, as you say as well, it's the main fight. I want it's the dream fight in boxing. It might not be for the kind of more quote unquote casual audience, with being lower weight classes and two Japanese fighters, but it's a beautiful fight. It's an outstanding fight, and yeah, it's a credit to the brilliance of Junto Nakatani that we are saying that he could come up to 122 and beat the seemingly unbeatable Naoya anyway. But yeah, I do think, no spoilers for the names we're going to talk about now, but I do think Junta would have the biggest chance of getting it done. But yeah, let's move on to another kind of way in which people think that Inoue could come unstuck is moving up in weight. People are saying, what is the ceiling? Will it be silver bantamweight? Will it be featherweight? So yeah, if he does move up to featherweight, whether it be before Junto or after Junto fight, how do you think he gets on there? There is interesting champions: Angelo Leo, Nick Ball, Stephen Fulton. There's good fighters there. How do you see him fitting in and dealing with the champions at 126?
I've seen some people over the past year or so saying that they think the current crop of featherweight champions would be too much size wise for Inoue. I'm not so sure I agree. I think he'd be all right against the names you've mentioned. I think Nick Ball, I would make Inoue a pretty big favourite against. Angelo Leo, has got one punch power. I think Inoue would have a big enough edge in boxing ability to negate it. I don't know how if he's going to carry the same, sort of fight in power himself up at that weight. That's maybe another question. I'm not saying he'd necessarily stop either of those two. Stephen Fulton, we saw the fight before. It was a very, very one-sided fight. Maybe up at 126, favour Stephen Fulton a bit more, probably taking more out of him to make that weight. Potentially anyway. I think Rafael Espinosa is the difficult one because I can't even really envisage how that fight looks in my head. I mean, Espinosa is what, 6'1", uh, mad height for a featherweight, incredibly rangy. Doesn't really use it. Doesn't fight tall at all. He only knows one way. Doesn't maybe have the one punch power of an Angelo Leo, but it's his volume. It's the shots from awkward angles. It's the gas tank, and I think of the current crop of featherweight champions because of those physical attributes. I think he would cause Inoue potentially the most problems. Really hard to even give a prediction on that one. But aside from that, I would be fairly confident in backing Inoue to beat the other three.
Yeah, you make good points there again. It's hard to really disagree. On paper, I do think that people make a bit too much of how, the jump up to featherweight would affect anyway. But of course, they are variables that you would have to take into account. You know, how does he kind of deal with the weight and how does he take a shot off big punch and featherweights? But I expect him to do that well enough. And you know, if he does kind of transition well, he does beat pretty much all of them, in my opinion. And I agree with what you said. First of all, Nick Ball. I think people kind of give Nick Ball a bit too much of a chance against Inoue. You know, he could have success early with his, you know, his strength and aggression, but I think that aggression would ultimately kind of be his downfall and lead him to getting picked off and stopped relatively early. So yeah, it's let's see if they can get anyway to Anfield. You know, the hostility of Anfield. See how he deals with that. But yeah, I think he'd come through Nick Ball with flying colours there. And you know, I totally agree with you about Rafael Espinosa. I really do. I think he's a fighter that doesn't really get the credit he deserves as of yet. We saw what he done to Robesi Ramirez, and even after that first fight, he didn't get the credit. And then he proved it wasn't really a flash in the pan performance. He done it again. And yeah, I think I totally agree. Espinosa is the one at featherweight who caused him the most problems with the size, the range, the combination punch, and the awkwardness. And he can punch, you know, as you say, he's not maybe a bigger one punch uh, knockout artist as the likes of an Angelo Leo, but he can crack. So yeah, it just be fascinating to see the dynamics and how he deals with the size and the range of Espinosa. But you know, if I had to pick now, I'd say anyway, gets it done. Um, I really would, but yeah, I think we're both agreeing that Junto is the one. You know, he's not quite unbeatable. If he ends up fighting Junto Nakatani, he could come unstuck. So yeah, hopefully we do get to see that fight. I think we will. It's a huge occasion for Japanese boxing and boxing in general. So yeah, it'll be absolutely phenomenal fight to watch. So yeah, let's hope that's if not after Akhmadaliev soon enough. But yeah, that was myself and Danny with our thoughts on is the monster Naoya anyway unbeatable? Can Akhmadaliev beat him? Can Junto beat him? Or any of the other names we outlined at featherweight or even beyond featherweight? So yeah, let us know what you think in the comments. Do you agree with our assessment of things? Could Junto beat him? Get involved down below. And as always, don't forget, drop a like on the video first of all. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at ESBR Boxing and follow us on all social media. Until next time, Danny, take care.
Cheers, folks.